So Article 20 here, I believe everything is agreed to by both of us. I highlighted it in green so you could, look through it, make sure we got it right. If it is right, then we can TA that. So we can start off with that today. And like I said, I believe I highlighted everything in green that was changes on both sides that was agreed to. If you see something wrong there, please let me know.
So Steve, do you think the changes so
Yeah, the insertion on sentence number 2, 5A, I know that was the one piece that we had TA'd. Looks like it matches up. But and I know the second sentence is just, in 5A is just to align with what Kim had talked about, right? And what we're practicing now. Is that correct?
Yeah, all I had outstanding on this was 5A,
Yeah.
and then that's your language there, so I assume that would take care of
yeah,
it.
yeah, we're TA'd.
All right,
Yeah,
Yep.
all right.
Yep.
Starting off good.
hey. So Kevin, will you be kind of printing up a TA page for Vance that you can send us and Vance and I can set aside or can sign? Perfect.
Great.
All right, next we have Article 3 coming your way.
Thank you.
So you can see the first page, we still have our original proposal. That's why it's in yellow there. If you turn the page, we've accepted your language with a small add-on under the longevity 7 and 9. Just making it really clear it's once per year. And it says that below in our proposal as well, each year. If you turn the page, you can see that continuation there. We've struck that as you guys have requested. Under extra duty, we accepted your language. That's why it's both in green for the changes there. Below that is our original proposals. That's why they're in yellow for the pieces down below there. So some progress, not everything we'd like to see, but we're making some progress on that one.
So on number 13, where you have you said you've gotten some language from Roseburg there on that. I'm just wondering if that, we have some stipulations regarding notice of change in shifts. I think it's in the work year, the work day or work year section of the contract. And without having that language in front of me,
I know what you're referencing.
yeah, so there's a kind of 30-minute adjustment. So if I'm a supervisor and I say, Vance, I need you to come in, 30 minutes early on Friday. Let's say it's Tuesday. Vance, I need you to come in 30 minutes early on Friday.
Mhm.
Does this, or let's say it's tomorrow. So Vance, I need you to come in tomorrow 30 minutes early than your shift. Then does this language apply then on that?
Yeah, the second scenario that would apply. In the first scenario, you'd be fine because you're giving more than 48 hours notice.
So even though so we've got a section in the contract that talks about how we can shift the workday.
You still can.
Okay.
We just want a little more advance notice so that, if there's childcare issues or things of that nature, we can make sure those folks have time to make the appropriate plans to shift their schedule.
Okay. Mhm.
Is there any other questions over this section before we move to the next thing?
Lisa, do you have any questions on this, or do we want to talk about it in caucus?
The only question I guess I've got, Kobe, is given that the language is in that workday article and you didn't open that workday article, I mean, it feels a little like we've got workday stuff that you kind of just dropped in.
Well, that's
And
not.
do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's not the intent though. I mean, we have language in here that talks about swing shift, which is also workday. It's basically why it's in here is because it's a pay issue. That's the idea behind it. There's a potential pay issue here. Same with the pandemic leave, same with the volunteer leave. It's all stuff that would require the district to pay. So we put it under wages because it just seemed to kind of be a natural fit there.
I mean, I understand the pandemic and the other one. This one just kind of felt like you're trying to find a way to get another article on the table to make a change with not having to actually open the article. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's not the intent. I mean,
Okay.
Jen knows I have plenty I want to work on in that article that we didn't do last time if I really wanted to open that article. This was meant to be, just like I said, because it's a pay issue. That's why
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the other things in here, that's why. Although there was one thing I forgot to point out that I should go back and point out under the swing shift. Yeah, was this the article? I thought it was. Oh, I didn't even highlight it. Oh, it didn't end up in this article. No, it's there. Oh, no, it's not. Never mind. We'll see it next time. I had a counter to your swing shift, but apparently it didn't make it in this version for some reason. So that's okay. We'll have to counter that next time. All right.
I mean, I think the same thing could be said, though. I mean, to echo, I don't know if concern is the right word, but, the volunteer and public safety is really a leave issue.
But it involves pay, right?
Well, I think you could probably almost think that everything involves a component of pay to some extent. I mean, so I think that that 11 is trying to, extend a leave opportunity for those who are doing public service. We have an article that talks about what kind of paid leave that there is. And I think you're essentially inserting a paid leave option to the salary just because the fact that wages aren't going to be forfeited. So I think it's a stretch of these two areas where there's, at least on those two, where it feels like the issue is related to their workday, and this, and then the volunteer public safety is related to leave, and you're making a wage connection because of,
Because that was the only way to get it onto the table, right? I mean, it just feels like
No.
a stretch of the intention of the parties in terms of trying to.
Well, I
limit
will
it
say
to a
that
certain
was,
number.
my intention was to put it there because of the pay issue. I understand if you don't agree. You have our proposal, so I guess that's where we're at. And I suppose you could choose not to bargain over it too.
No, I just think that it's important. I mean, you guys have a pretty transparent, upfront relationship. And I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
think that it's important to share, you know,
No, and
some of
that's,
the things I've heard in terms of, you know, the impression when you look at it, what the intention was when we agreed to a limited reopener. So,
and I think that's fair. But I'm going to tell you, as Dan's dealt with me many times, you know, I'm pretty straightforward about it. You know, that's, the intention was for that reason. If we don't agree that that's the right spot for it, that's fair. But the intention was to put it in there because of the pay component. That was the idea. You know, there was nothing more to it than that, you know. We don't need to open up extra articles. We had plenty of that last year. So I'm okay to wait another year for that. But that was the intention, to put it in there with those pay things. And to be fair, when we bargained last time, we had a few things that kind of, we decided to move to other articles. That, like Dan's right, we do have a leave article, we moved some stuff to the leave article from another article. So our intention was to bring it forward in the section because of the pay component. Now, I understand what you're saying, but, and we could, I guess technically that one, we could move it to the leave as a counter, I suppose, but I'm more worried about getting it right and then figuring out, we can figure out where we need to move it if we really want to move it. I think that's fair, you know, if we want to change that up. We certainly did that last time with the contract, so.
well, I'd hate to undo an article that we just completely TA'd on, but I'd have to say, when I'm looking at the list of types of leaves that are in Article 20, when you've got parental leave, military leave, political leave, OSEA leave, it feels like volunteer and public safety leave is an appropriate title. However, I hate to undo an article that we've just TA'd on.
Well, to be fair too, some of those leaves, in fact, a good chunk of them are unpaid leaves, right? You know, like the OCA and the other leaves, right? So,
Sure.
I mean, it's a kind of a mixed bag, right? So that's, you know, like I said, the reason why I put it where I did is because I felt that it was a pay issue. It would, the district would be paying these people to do this, right? They're not just taking leave off to go work for the union or leave to go unpaid leave, you know? And we can certainly talk about that. I mean, we TA'd the article the way it is now. There's nothing stopping us to agree, like we did last time with the cleanup committee, to go through and move things where we think would be more appropriate. I have no issue with that. Or we can open up 20 again if that's, you know, that's, I'll leave that in your court, however you want to handle that.
Why don't we just, we'll both currently leave 20 TA'd and our teams can talk about it.
That sounds like a good plan. Any other questions on 3 before we move to 4?
Nope.
Okay. Let's do go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this article, we still have the amount in blue. We took into consideration the $5 and adjusted accordingly for that from last time. The green is your language that we've adopted into our proposal. I believe it's, with the exception of one typo on the next page, it's all your language. If you go to number 5, where it says up to limit specified there, the autocorrect changed that from HSA to has. So I saw that too late. So just an FYI on that. And then down below, I believe everything else is our original proposal. It's all in yellow.
So last time we had talked about how in Article 25, you had a section there, reduction in work hours, where there was some changing in the definitions of regular full-time, regular part-time, where there's some adjustments in what those are. And then I'm seeing that again in part-time proration. So is that intentional to say the part-time proration goes from 20 to 15?
That is intentional, and it feeds, if you follow down below, it follows with the chain down below, I
Okay.
believe.
So then on 6 again, regular part-time less than 15 hours. Just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
Okay.
That's specific to the proration part of it.
so basically, again, this is just the adjustment of the per month from your last proposal and your acceptance of the language, our proposal in B.
Yeah, the green is the language
Okay.
that you proposed. That's the change. Everything else should be yellow in the original proposal. I believe that's what it says. Yeah. that's what it says. Right. Well, they wouldn't be prorated, right? If they're above that. Correct.
I don't have any other questions.
Can you do 16? So with 16, you'll see that it's in yellow as our original proposal. We did accept your language on number 5. They added number 5 down below in green.
So we had some language in our counter that talked about successful completion of the probationary period could get 2 of 7 days of the first year award. And you're rejecting that and sticking with your original proposal?
Yeah, everything's the same except for we did accept the number 5 at the bottom in green. Is there any questions before we move on from that?
I don't have any.
25?
Bless you.
So 25, obviously the green again is the things that I believe we agreed upon on the first page there. You can see that on the second page. Down under bumping rights under number, which is 3D, we still want to stick with changing out the proficiency, and I'm going to have Ty speak to why that is and things we've heard.
So one reason why I was thinking of changing mastery proficiency is I find that mastery can be a little exclusive and have a negative connotation with it, but proficiency a little more inclusive. So that's my thought process. When you show proficiency that as opposed to being master. I'm proficient in my job. I would not consider myself a master at my job.
And then if you go a couple more pages here under recall under E, we still have the original change there that we had proposal go from 135 days to 90 like they do in Cascade and North San Am. And then on the last page, we did take off the ORS and I changed the language because the 14 days is inconsistent with the long-term leave in 18. I changed that to mirror that language exactly with hopes that that would fix some of this. Because you have it saying extends more than a week in one part of the contract, the other part of the contract is 14 days. Those are in conflict. So if we're going to sit down and bargain this stuff, then we should be talking apples to apples, in my opinion, and keeping it consistent where we can. So that's still there. The real difference is we took off the ORS, like Lisa suggested.
In which part, Kofi, are you saying that this matches? I mean,
The long-term under 18.
got it.
I copied and pasted the language right from there, so it'd be the exact same. So it'd be consistent, rather than saying 7 days.
You mean Article 18, right?
Article 18, their short-term, long-term disability, or long-term closure.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. And then our last article is 18. We have a counter. So under 18 here, obviously we disagree with a lot of what you proposed. We did find a few common spaces. We do want to keep short-term emergency closures, but we did figure that adding delays would make sense because we have that, we speak to that below. We accepted part of your language under A. We agree the telephone tree is, not the only way to contact your employees. It makes sense. We did keep the last sentence that you had struck in yours. And added of a delay or if, and then the rest of that sentence there, just to clarify. This article, when I really looked at it, I really had some concerns about it because of the fact that a lot of the language you're striking is stuff that not only we work on together, but some of the languages that the district proposed to us, right? And it's been in place for a year or so. It's just a little baffling to some of our folks, and I think me too, that we would do such a major rewrite of something that we did a major rewrite of already the last go around. I really expected we were going to tweak it and fine tune some things, but that's why you're getting full ZR before you. And the members have spoke up about this too to us. I'm going to have Vance read one such member's reply.
There isn't a middle
Oh,
page
well, that's
because
great.
they, or is there?
No, I think there is. I think it's, oh, was it your middle page?
Yeah.
Is this the original language? So this is the original language, which I think it is. We don't have the middle page because we're not agreeing with it. Does that make sense? We're proposing current language with the changes at the top. The green part, and the yellow
It
part.
just is shorter when they take all of our.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Sorry about the confusion. Yeah, that's what it is. All right, Vance, go ahead.
So I heard from several members, this one struck me. Many of them, most of them were identical to this. This one just seemed to be the nicest written. So after reviewing the proposed changes by the district, I'm disheartened that they feel that an emergency closure that is out of our control, such as wildfires and ice storms that devastated our hearts and homes this last year, warrants a punishment. As a member of our community that was in direct line of destruction we faced last year, I'm deeply hurt that the district would decide that our personal leave is supposed to cover something that is completely out of our control. We need those days for actual personal reasons, not an act of Mother Nature. Some of us were trapped in our homes without power for multiple weeks. Some of us fled our homes for multiple weeks, fearing our homes were burning down or being looted. I'm not asking for a handout or pay without working, but to require us to use our leave or our well-earned personal days, as many of us have put in hundreds of hours at the district, would not insult us by taking our personal days from us, because we all know that when we need those, we truly need those days. Some of us have gone years without ever taking them at all. We know that we are what makes the district work, and frankly, we feel guilty taking those days. We're team players. At least treat us with the same respect that they treat the certified staff. This is a flat out bullying and insulting, especially after the year we just had. I didn't even address employees that would have already taken their personal days for what would happen with inclement weather then. We get penalized, no pay. This proposal doesn't make sense. As per Article 18, currently in the certified CBA, I personally believe this is the acceptable solution for classified. I can't imagine why it would be any different. I would advocate for our classified staff and union to not accept these changes, and this causes trust issues with any future article wording suggested by the district. The district constantly says they care about us. The least they could do to prove that is to protect the personal days that we have. Thank you.
And the thing that I think that when I come back to for me is that we're talking about days that were budgeted, right? You know, you set a budget out, you offer somebody a contract, a 176-day employee, you know, so if you take back these days or they get unpaid, you know, that's just savings that goes, it's money that gets right back into the district's pocket at the expense of the employee. And that's the thing I think that really comes back to bother me about this, is that we've budgeted the money, we've set it forward, you know, because of something that nobody controls, we're going to take it back from these folks, you know, take it out of them. And that's the piece that I feel is just shameful with this. I'll just be honest with you, you know. So we're hoping that you will reconsider. Obviously, that's a decision you have to make. But you see where we're at with our proposal, and I think you know why now. at the very least. That's all of our proposals, folks. Any last questions or anything? If not, I know you don't have a room to caucus, so we'll move to our caucus room.
All right.
And you want to just text Vance when you're ready?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Is Maddie nearby? Do we know?
I can pause it for you. I was just kidding, Maddie, about leaving it running.
I don't have a certain expected time of return.
Do we want to say 6:30?
Probably realistically, probably 6:30.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
We don't have.
She can say,
anything to
yeah,
so-
I think if she says 6:30, that's a good place to start.
Sounds good.
That's.
Well, while Ty's printing those, I wanted to introduce Melinda. She's our alternate for Mary Jo and Annie.
Works up at
Couldn't be here
Silvercrest,
today.
correct? Nailed it. Have you met your new principal yet? She hasn't been up there?
Well, she may have been.
Okay.
I haven't personally met her, and I don't know that she has been actually. I think they said she is gonna be in town maybe the 14th and 15th of June, and she was gonna try and come up.
We found out she's got a place here now, so, and I know her and James are talking regularly, so she's excited to get here, so,
That would be good.
yeah.
Was that?
How many districts are you voting with right now? Huh?
8. Just 8.
Lots
That's
to
all.
keep track
Yeah.
of.
That's a lot to keep track of.
Oh, should I write it down? Hopefully I don't have to.
Actually, that reminds me, since you were speaking, we have a hard time hearing you, Steve.
Okay.
So if you can speak up, that'd be great.
I'll probably put my mouth down when I talk about the budget. I have allergies right now, so I'm not coming out very clear.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Dan, it's like he knows. Every time I come here, I get an email from Andy Blanco. or whatever his last name is. It's like he knows I'm in Silver Falls. Just got one from him.
Are you bargaining with them right now too?
No, I finished them up at the early beginning of the year. We got them again next year. I sent a 2-year deal out there.
I haven't talked to Andy in many months. Did he get hired permanently now? Do you know?
I don't think so. I think, 'cause I think he's doing that work back thing. So I can recall, retired and work back thing. So I think I think they extended him, if I remember right.
Mhm.
I can't remember if it's a year or 2 years. I mean, basically. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
they have an
Might
end
as
date,
well.
but
Sure.
they have an end date, but it's, he's like whatever for a minute.
Everybody gearing up for graduation, Lisa?
No, it's the two separate cohorts on the same day, though, correct?
Now, you weren't on the call the other night for meeting the potential new APs, assistant principals, were you? new assistant principals or new assistant principal who taking Johnny Farrow's place. Were you on that call the other night? Okay. Didn't think so. Pretty nice weather to sit on a Zoom call for 90 minutes. Yeah, well, it wasn't as well attended, but so,
It was even nicer weather to be out and about, not on a Zoom call, apparently.
right, yeah. Which one is that, Ty?
Three.
Okay. So just to kind of, is the other one printing right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to give you kind of a heads up on the order that we're gonna talk to you about is we're gonna start with our counter proposal for 25, which is what'll be printing off. We're gonna talk a little bit about 16 vacations. We don't have a counter. We'll talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
We've got a counter proposal for 3 there in front of you, and 3 and Steve will give kind of a budget, a district budget update at that point, tied to 3.
Okay.
Kind of 3 and 4 tied together with the budget, and then we're gonna respond to number 18. We don't have a counter proposal, but we'll talk a little bit about
Sure.
some of the things we heard.
Okay, sounds like a good plan.
Hopefully as soon as Ty gets back, yeah, she can, I'm assuming she's back there somewhere.
I believe she already turned it
Oh,
on.
did she? Okay.
Oh, we're waiting for 25, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now, if it's Sunday next time, we're setting up the tables outside.
That's,
Then we
I'm not sure if Maddie would agree to that with the
Oh.
camera setup and microphones, but I would love to be
That's what I'm
outside.
hearing, is if she does agree, we're good. Just kidding.
I wouldn't leave that in Maddie's court.
Yeah.
All right, so we accept your proposal of proficiency there on 5, or no, excuse me.
Oh, we can do that.
It is 3.
So it is 3D. We accept your change of from mastery to proficiency.
Okay.
And then the other, we're going back to current contract language for that's totally fine. Under E, is that which number? 5E? 5E and 5I, we're retaining current contract language. And our basis for that under E, 135 days is similar to what it takes for a licensed teacher to count as a full year. So that's consistent with how that works for them. So we're just retaining that same standard of 135 days. On I, kind of felt like your changes were more closely aligned to what we have in the emergency closure where
Yeah.
there's a certain number and it triggers at a certain point. But I think these are really kind of an apples and orange sort of thing. I mean, we were kind of talking about back in the days of furloughs that happened in the early 2000s, and some districts, I think, might have gotten themselves up to maybe 14 days. And so the likelihood of that length of furlough, is really unlikely. And so we're just more comfortable with current contract language.
So you see it a little differently than what we have under 18, even though it uses temporary, in this context here of 14 days. I'm trying to line them up so they're even, so that it's the same time frame is all I was trying to do with this. That's where the initial 7 days came from.
I think there's two different events. I mean, we've got some language proposed to you under emergency closure that talks about, so in the event of school closing down, we're not going to use those events to try to save money. A furlough event is in the case of lack of funds from the state kind of situation. So I see them as two totally different types of triggering events.
Okay, well, that answers.
I know,
the
Lisa,
problem.
if you want to.
So, yeah, so Hobie, this language and I didn't bargain it, so I obviously can't speak to this specifically. I did work for OSBA at the time. Most of this language was, and what was going on at the time was a lack of funding for schools. And for those of you who were working in education at the time, school districts were basically furloughing, literally shutting down operations for anywhere from 1 day to 2 days to 14 days. And it was all financial based. It was all, and what most districts were trying, it was the first time any of them had ever experienced that kind of loss in the middle of a year. So the question then became, how did we actually exercise our right to do that? How did we shut down, right? So everybody thought, well, that's a layoff, right? You just lay everybody off. And so notices went out and layoff procedures. And the union's response was, wait a minute, a layoff kind of presumes somebody's left, right? So it obviously wasn't intended to be used for the purposes that you're talking about. And so there was a lot of tussle legally over whether layoffs could or couldn't be used for those furloughs. And I believe this language ended up getting bargained and dropped in here to address that issue for Silver Falls. So it was a completely different, and I don't think we've used it since then. I mean, I haven't heard of a school district furloughing since those, and I believe it was the early 2000s. Does anyone,
2002, 2003.
was anyone here, was
There
anyone
was
working in
single years.
education at the time we furloughed?
Well, Dan will tell you, I did try to strike it out in the original part.
Yeah. I mean, so they're just completely
So-
different.
Okay.
They're just kind of different situations.
Yeah, and I appreciate that history from the language. I mean, it's obviously before my time down here, so it's good to hear that. Okay, we'll take another look at that. And then just on the 90 days piece, just because the teachers have to be 135, is that the idea?
Well, we just think that, 90 calendar days is only 3 months. That's not a lot of time to be earning steps. So we think 135 is, a more appropriate number of days worked.
Okay.
It's consistent with what the teachers have.
I'll make that note. All right, well, thank you for that explanation. I really do appreciate it.
So on 16, we're just going with our 518 proposal of where we had proposed that employees can use two of their, take a look at that language. They can use 2 of their 7 days after completing the probationary period We are going to, explore this. No reasonable vacations, a little broad for us. We will maybe explore, maybe you can look at some of the other districts you work with to see. I know Vance, we've talked a little bit about, one common reason for vacation denial is maybe someone wanting to take 3 weeks off at a time. Are there other instances that you can talk about where people have not been able to, vacations denied that you would say is not reasonable?
I don't know of any. Ron, you have a little longer history. Yeah, I think a couple summers ago, they had it tied up where only one person could be off at a time or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard directly from a few members that have talked about, like, hey, I want to do this trip down to Australia, and, I want to have 3 weeks. So I can really, I'm not probably going to go back. It's probably one done. And so there's a problem. They can only get 2 weeks or, and it's like if they have the vacation, we want them to use it, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a couple of things that brought to me is, those kinds of examples. So when we're talking about reasonable, obviously what we're talking about there is like somebody who you can plan for it. You can, make sure you have appropriate people you need in place. That's more of what we're talking about there. We're not saying that tomorrow I show up and I say, it's not reasonable if you don't give me a 3-week vacation tomorrow, right? Because obviously if they're a position that you cover, you got to set that up. So, but I think that's what I've heard directly, and then with the examples they've given you. So, if that helps.
Yep. And we'll look at maybe what some of our neighboring districts do, see if they have any language that we could look at there. So on to Article 3, we're mostly, all of it is our original proposal, but we did, you had brought in some language related to, the ORS, and so we added that language that it's a little broad, maybe a little broader than yours. The parties are agree negotiations will be pursuant to the PECPA. We're still hoping for a 2-year agreement. And then we just counter propose with that language there.
Yeah.
But everything else is from our original proposal. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve. Slide the microphone over.
Yeah. So you're fine with just eliminating any kind of date? I'm fine with that as well, personally, but I'll talk to the team. But is that what you're saying? You just want to follow basically you don't want to include all this law language in the ORS. You just want to follow the laws, you're saying? You don't want a date of like May 1st or something? I don't know that it matters because we're always waiting until May 1st to get any numbers anyway, right? For budget.
Well, only every other year.
Well,
I
fair,
mean-
fair enough. No, that's
Right.
true.
I mean,
That's
if
true.
you end up signing a 2-year contract this time, there won't be,
Right.
there won't,
That's
the,
true.
the funding for the first year of the new contract will already have been defined.
Right.
By the end of the,
Right. No,
second
that's
year,
fair.
right? So,
To be clear, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just making sure I understand.
well, I think that's what we originally had proposed.
We had no dates.
Okay.
We struck all of that out because that was pertaining to, what we agreed upon last, in the fall.
Right.
Is what we were coming back under to complete, basically complete bargaining under this contract, so.
All right, thanks. That's the only question I had.
All right. As I would, normally do, and I did last year,
Steve?
there's always
Sorry
a,
to interrupt.
yeah.
Maddie said if we don't talk at least this close, they can't hear us. Yeah. I gotta watch that too.
Maddie, can you hear us now? Is just a time for the budget update. And I know the first meeting we're usually, it's rapid fire, just getting the articles exchanged. So I just felt like this would be a good time to talk about where we're at, especially since we've had the state quarterly economic forecast that came out since our last meeting. So feels like the right time. Just to put it out there, as far as our proposals are concerned, on a kind of a total cost basis for salary and insurance specifically, there's a couple of elements I didn't get costed out yet, but we're a little over $1.1 million apart at this time. And I'm going to come back to some of those details. I want to talk more broadly about the state, our budget and the state budget. So it's kind of mixed news, from a state economic perspective. It was a great forecast that was released. I think the economists even use the word, or Morgan at COSA said stunning. So things are looking really good. From that side of it, if you look at board book at the 2 budget committee meeting agendas, there's a lot of information that you can simply click on, including the state forecast linked on there. So if you want to take a closer look. So we recovered this, this biennium recovered quite a while ago, and now even the long term, looking out 2 or 3 biennia into the future, has now recovered to pre-pandemic levels. So it helps us a lot, but then the next step is, what is the legislature going to provide K-12 specifically? So as you recall, both the governor and the legislative co-chairs came out with a $9.1 billion biennial budget. And that it sat at that number for quite a while, and they typically will not make a move until they get this May-June state forecast. So they had already started to make a move to add 200 million to that to make it 9.3 they were going to take out of reserves, and then the forecast came out a lot better than they thought. So it's unknown at this point if they're going to follow through with dipping into the reserves or just go ahead and take the additional revenues they didn't expect and add to it. So at this point, I'm very comfortable saying that the floor is 9.3, not 9.1. Every $100 million in the state budget means just a little over $300,000 in additional state school fund revenue for Silver Falls each year of the budget for the next 2 years. So with that additional 200 million, that's about $630,000 each year additional from what was forecast. The bad news is that it's still $300 million short of current service level. So just rolling up all of our costs, adding, step, some COLA, inflation on non-personnel type items, is calculated that 9.6 just allows us to do business in the same fashion that we are today. They have the money to add more than 9.3, but at this point, it doesn't look likely that will increase. They're hoping to get it to at least 9.4, but it's not done yet. I believe they voted just a few days ago. I don't remember if it was in the House or the Senate. They officially voted the 9.3, and it still has to pass in the other chamber. So keep a close eye on the news here in the next few days. They're obviously kind of coming down to the nitty gritty, trying to get to the end of the session, and we'll see what happens with that. So it was good news, but it would be nice if they would add to it a little bit more. The thing that's different from last year is, as you recall, in March and April last year, as the pandemic started, we had a shock and awe moment with just the pandemic in general, and then the economy fell off the cliff for a short time, and unfortunately we had that quick V recovery. So I think when we started talking last year, we had fears that they were going to have to cut the 1921 state budget, which would mean we get less per student this year. Fortunately, the recovery occurred quickly, and that did not happen. So we were funded at the same level for 2021 as we expected. And we also knew going into 2021 that no matter what happened with our enrollment, that we would be covered by our enrollment number from last year, because ODU will give us whatever our current enrollment is per student, or our total enrollment based on the current year or the prior year. So we, at the low point, we were down 11% of our student population. And this is where our unstable budget situation really comes into play, is around the enrollment piece. Silver Falls has never, at least in the last 15 or 20 years, had to worry about the enrollment part of the equation. We've been blessed to be in a district that has been stable or slightly growing every year for a really long time. And there's a lot of districts that don't have that situation. So we're not alone. Most districts in the state have suffered the same plight, anywhere from 5 to 15% drop in enrollment. We were down 11%, or 400 students. With the charter schools, we're just under 4,000 students. If you take the charter schools out, that we're at 30, usually around a little over 3,700. That number dropped to a little under, well, about 3,540 with charters, and then subtract the 260 from the charter, so 3,300. So a huge drop. Fortunately, as we got into hybrid, we did start to recover a little bit. We're down, I think we gained maybe 50 or 60 students back. So the tricky part about building the 2021-2022 budget is, for one, we don't have the cover of the 1920 enrollment number anymore. It's going to be this year's enrollment or next year's enrollment, whatever is higher. I'm convinced we will not get back to the enrollment number we were at pre-pandemic. I budgeted at about a 70% return rate overall. The evidence we've seen over the last few weeks indicates it could be even less than that. There's a lot of things going on. We've had now, since the initial budget meeting, schools have had some pre-enrollment time, the transfer process, kindergarten roundups. We also have the complexity of the Robert Frost and Mark Twain reconfigurations, and some people, still probably trying to figure out maybe what boundary they're in or what have you. But then, of course, we have the families that want to know for sure we're going to be 5-day-a-week in-person instruction next year. They're going to wait until they know that for sure. Now that's our goal, and that's where we aim to get. But there's families holding out for that part of it too. The high school and the middle school didn't really have a major problem with the enrollment piece, but there's our K-8 schools and Mark Twain that did. Only 60 of our 120 kindergartners showed up at Mark Twain this year, and Butte Creek has seen a drop off, and there were actually reasons for that even before the pandemic, as a lot of you know. And then the transfer process, we just didn't see the volume of interdistrict transfers that we normally see. So the district is keeping that process open. Normally it would be closed and most of those schools full, but because we have, Central Howell down 50 or 60 kids, and Butte Creek down compared to where they used to be, we're keeping that process open. So there's still a lot of time for things to happen, but we have to prepare that we could be down 200 kids from what our normal situation is, which, at just over $9,000 per student, that's, $1.8 million. So very happy we got the extra $630,000 in state school funding, increasing the amount per student, but very precarious situation with the number of students that we'll actually have in the district. So with all that being said, we've taken the stance the last 13 or 14 months of, just trying our best to, this year as we went into, we didn't know what service model we were going to be in, and then we quickly, we knew we were going to start online, but we didn't know how long that would last. And then the CDL, we were able to take, teaching positions, for example, that people left, resigned for going into the school year, and we were able to not refill those. We were able to repurpose and use, teachers, obviously everyone taught in the CDL, and some were dedicated to online only. So So we were trying to gain through attrition and save some money this year. We also saved some money, obviously in transportation this year. 70% of that's reimbursed through the state school fund. So it's a true net savings of 30% of that cost, but that helps. And then of course, especially in the licensed world, we really didn't have any substitute costs until we started into hybrid. So there's some things that we didn't spend that we would have spent had we been, in person. So there was some savings there. So it's really all just a balancing act. And as we go into this next school year, even though we think that we'll be back 5 days in person, we don't know for sure. We know there's families holding out still until we know. And so we do have some schools that may have more teachers than the number of students would call for, but we also have learning loss to address, for example. And so that's where ESSER funds, the stimulus package, can help us for this next year, help be a stabilizer for the unknown until we kind of figure out what our new normal is going to be. So fortunately, we do have federal stimulus dollars coming that can help us with that, but those dollars also will be used to help with more PPE and potential more ventilation type improvements. There's lots of uses for that. So fortunately, we do have those funds. It's very similar to the Great Recession in 2007, 2008 that lasted for 3 or 4 years. There was federal dollars that came in then. So it's, we become a little more reliant on temporary, unsustainable federal dollars while we try to figure out. Fortunately, the state budget's better than it was at the start of the Great Recession, but it looks like they're going to try to pack more into reserves for, future problems. So anyway, so that's just kind of a big picture of the budget, and we really just don't know how many kids are going to walk in the door at this point, and we're just trying to manage it and take in more information every day and go from there. As far as what was budgeted for classified, we did budget what our proposal was, which was a step plus 2% COLA, and every 1% is $55,000 in wages, and when you add the PERS and taxes in and take that for 2%. Well, every 1% is $76,000, including the PERS and the taxes. So 2% is $152,000. STEP costs $184,000. So that's about $347,000 that we budgeted for STEP and COLA. Insurance-wise, that was a small amount because we did the $5 per month, so that's $11,000. $11,000 per $5 is the equation. So every $5 a month is $11,000 for the year in additional cost. Then as far as so if you add the STEP and the COLA with taxes and PERS, that comes up to about $350,000. Your proposal at $3 more per hour for each position, each column, each step, comes out to an additional $735,000 plus taxes and PERS. It comes out to $1 million, and it equates to an average of 13.4% COLA across the board, but that could range from 6% to 22%, depending on which column, which cell we're talking about. Insurance at $100 a month would be $180,000. We do have 35 participants in the HRA Viva, which is great. At $400 a month, that's costing about 11. Well, there's some that are a little less because they're not full-time, but it's $11,200 a month right now, $135,000 per year. Of course, with the proposal going from 400 to 800 per month, that would double that, so be an additional 135,000. So take the $1 million plus the insurance, the HRA Viva part, that's 315,000. So $1.3 million. I did not yet cost out the cost of the vacation proposal and also the difference on the proration methodology in the insurance article. I don't have that cost out. I know last year when I costed out the vacation piece, it was an extra $70,000 per year. I looked that up today. So essentially, including step of 184,000, we're close to about $1.5 million, and our budget was at about $350,000 in additional cost. So I just wanted to lay that all out there as far as where we're at, and we're just trying to, there's still a lot to figure out, and really a lot of it just swirls around the enrollment piece right now. So
And then let's assuming we went up to $800 on the Viva, the other half would go back to the district, correct? As a savings.
the other half, well, we're paying $400 a month right now, and
Right.
that would double the cost of what we're doing right now.
Right, but it would save over the total cap, insurance cap. So I'm saying the other half of the insurance cap, but beyond $800, it's roughly about half, I think, would goes back to the district. Now, you pay 400 and the other 1,200 or whatever goes back to the district or whatever it is, as savings is when people opt out to take it, right? Okay. And then the other thing that I just questioned about is if you've got any numbers. I just haven't seen any on the Student Success Act money. I know we're supposed to get it in June here. I heard
Mhm.
it's coming in better than we thought, but I
Yep.
haven't gotten any numbers. Have you?
Well, just again, to revisit history. So our first year for Silver Falls, we were supposed to get $3 million for
Right.
SIA. And then, of course, we fell off the cliff and it went to zero.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things recovered quick and we ended up with $1 million, and we started Sequoia Falls Academy. The next year, I think our projection is at 2.5 million.
I just was curious if you'd heard any numbers. I'm getting that it's better than they thought with the pandemic, but I haven't
Mhm.
gotten a solid number yet. So-
Yeah, I don't remember what the statewide number is, but it's close to where it started last year before they took it away.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm hearing.
We're close, 2.5, and originally we were going to be at 3 this year. So,
Right,
and then Measure 98 still out there. We have a
right.
$1.1 million for summer school. That's a statewide funded opportunity. So Leslie's working really hard on that. We have all these special defined purpose. And I'm not saying SIA is not sustainable. The ESSER and the statewide summer school is kind of a one and done, but
Right.
the SIA and Measure 98 or Measure 98 is going into year 5 now, and this will be year number 2 of SIA. So hopefully a sustainable resource, but it's a supplemental resource as well. As far as doing new things to help help kids succeed. So hopefully that provides. I know it's a lot of numbers and information in a short amount of time, but I just wanted to give you an honest assessment of where we're at.
All right. Well, thank you for the presentation.
I could touch on one thing. I asked you this question when you presented Article 4 on insurance,
Mhm.
just to make sure I understood regarding the lowering the thresholds by which people get a prorated amount and whatnot. And, so while I understand it is your intent to increase the different levels at which people get insurance paid for and whatnot, I do want to emphasize that the concern I have is that language starts in the recognition clause by saying at what point are you a certain kind of employee, let's say, and those examples they show up in various parts of the contract. We saw that in Article 25. And so I do think we're creating confusion when we have, employees defined by the hours they work per week, and that's consistent throughout the contract in different ways. But in this one particular insurance article, it's different. And so I just think that that's going to create confusion for folks when there's a definition in one place, it's threaded throughout the contract except for one article. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying there. I mean, obviously nothing stops us from doing it this way, but I hear your concern. I do hear it. Thank you for that.
So with that, I want to talk a little bit about what we heard in regards to Article 18. And, you know, I guess our perspective is, as we all know, we've experienced a school year like no other in terms of what the types of events that we've undergone in terms of closure. I can think of no example of anyone being forced to use leave or forced to. I mean, we'll come back next time with the calendar of days that were expected to be worked and what people got paid for. Everybody came out better than what was started. Everybody. And when we met with the wildfires and we realized that the fairness between maybe what teachers got and classified got, we worked hard to make sure our 10-month employees got days accrued. You guys even presented that, hey, if this President's Day thing goes through the way you have, you're going to have a group of people that are going to feel like now I get forced to work. And so we even gave those folks 4 hours that was even, I mean, from a certain perspective, you could say it wasn't deserved, but you painted a picture of people losing a day that they thought they were going to have off, even though they've already been paid for it. And so hearing that, we said, okay, well, yeah, let's give those folks 4 hours, just because we don't want them feeling when that day comes around that's going to happen. You know, we had a handful of employees that worked all 5 days of the ice storm closure. You know, I think if I would have taken the letter of the contract that said you get 1 compensatory day and that's all you get for a school year, we gave those folks a compensatory day, which I think we could have made the argument we didn't have to do. And I've heard lately that some people found out about that and aren't happy about that either. So I think I heard you say shameful. I'm not sure where that comes from because we did everything in our power to do better than the contract in terms of that. I think our attempt in what we put together was it is very kind of confusing when we have 10, 11, and 12-month employees and whose you know, their work looks different depending on their role and trying to kind of line up what's going to happen in these events. So yeah, we went through an event where we can say, wow, in the event this happens again, let's have this spelled out a little more clearly what's going to happen. But I don't think we, especially this year, have any evidence that people didn't get more than what, you know, I heard. I don't exactly sure what was said, but the comment in the letter was something that we want to get paid for the work that we do, and I believe that. And you know, but we didn't make people make up time just to make up time. And you know, I even had a conversation with Vance during the ice storms where we're trying to kind of balance this approach of what happens to the person that can't get out of their driveway or stuck, you know, taking care of a family in Albany or this, that, and the other. And, you know, do you trust the supervisors to go, hey, get here when you can. Don't worry about it. Get here when you can. Or, and we all know that there are some employees that are like, yeah, I'm not sure. You know, and trusting that the supervisor says, okay, you're going to need to use leave if you can't come in. So trying to give our supervisors a little bit of discretion and a little bit of credit for those types of situations. So our experience this last year is that we went above and beyond for all of our classified folks to make sure they did not see a pay loss or lose leave. Some during the ice storm were, that couldn't make it. I think there were about 3 that used leave. But, I discussed those situations with fans. I think we were kind of on the same page. Those were some choices those employees made. So our attempt here is simply to acknowledge that the members of your bargaining unit fall into 3 different groups, and spelling it out to kind of what happens to each of your group just keeps it clear up front. We're certainly not trying to just hold over people's leaves over their heads. So I think we demonstrated that this year, that if someone said they were in a situation they couldn't get there, we worked with them. So we can show you the numbers of what was worked this year versus the calendar, so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But, I think our situation presents itself that we need more language that's more clear.
I think your intention, Dan, as I listened to you talk about this, was that this is reflective of how you kind of managed it, sort of, although you had more leave that you granted than was in this proposal, that we also had kind of a black swan year, so to speak. I mean, I hope we don't have a pandemic, a fire, an ice storm. Of course, Janet has warned me to be careful about that, like wood, or do I not, right? And none of this requires them to use leave unless the days are not in fact made up, unless there is no work performed. So in most cases, you're going to end up in a more traditional workspace where the work will actually be made up and everyone walks away with it basically being square. So we felt that the descriptor of how you described it mischaracterized our proposal, and we felt it was kind of important to help try and put maybe a better context, a better understanding about what we were trying to accomplish with this proposal.
Okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and Dan, with what you were saying, I can't disagree with anything you said about what's happened this year. I think that, quite frankly, I think you should leave the language alone because it worked well. You and Matt sat down and figured it out. I don't think there is a problem. That's the first thing I would say. The part that I feel is shameful, and I don't think I've used that word before now with you, is taking it back from the employees because they're stuck at home for a fire or for snow or for ice storm. Like this person's letter said, they're not asking for a handout. They're happy to, this person's a 10-month employee. They'll be happy to make up the time, and that's very much the intent of the language you currently have. We were flexible and we worked with the days of picking up taking teacher days and making them, non-contact days and making them contact days. It worked really great for the teachers. It kind of messed us up a little, but we found our way through that. And I think that we should be proud of what we've done this year. That's the confusion. The shameful part that I want to be clear about is where we take a budgeted employee of 176 days, just picking a number, and then we have them use 3 of their days to pay that back in. That's the shameful part.
That's not what this proposal does, Hopi.
It can. If you read the language,
It
can.
only works that way if they don't actually perform the work, if those days aren't made up.
But the board controls that. They have the ability to make those days up. That's what I'm saying. They're not saying they won't make, this person that sent us this email is not saying that they won't make those days up. If you choose not to do it, you're choosing for a plethora of reasons, so I can understand that.
That's the reason to bring clarity between the different people that work 180 days, 209 days, and 260 days. The 260-day employees, there's no more room on the calendar to make those days up. It's important to bring clarity between the different groups in terms of how many days that they work, because there are very distinct differences.
So let's use the 260-day employees. I'm Vance. I'm stuck at home because you shut the school because the fire might be rolling through here. Now I have to burn my vacation because I'm a 260-day employee for something I have no control over. And all that does is give a savings to the district when they've already budgeted 260 days. So it's a back-end way to save money. Whether that's the intent or not, that's really what's happening, or could happen under this proposal. That's the concern. That's the concern. And this is something that, one of the things that when I look at it, coming from a different world, it's very unusual to see this, for me. I get it in public sector, it's been this way in a lot of places, and we're bargaining in a lot of places to get rid of it, quite frankly. Because I think this last year has worked. It's been a function, not a bug. You guys have sat down, you've talked, you've worked these things out. And I would say the district here has been more than helpful in this process and went above and beyond. I think that's fair. But we did all that with the current language we have. So I guess that's the problem I have. Why do we have to change and define and do these different things when the process we have is working? I feel, and from what you're saying, you feel it worked this year. So that's the piece that I've really lost on here. I only see a potential for people to be burning their vacation doing something other than, but all of us should do on our vacation. If I ever get one, I'll try it. Go out and do our own thing, get away from this for a minute, clear our head and come back stronger. All the studies point to that. You've all seen it. So I don't understand this. When I'm trapped at home because of an ice storm or because of a fire, unless I started the fire, I didn't do any of these things. You didn't either, but you have a budget scheduled already for these amount of people. This is what, if the normal year, if it happened, you'd pay those 260 people that same amount of money. So that's the problem that I have. I'll speak for me on this. That's the problem that I have. Okay.
It sounds like you're almost describing like there's some benefit to the district, some gain. None of these people benefit when there's an expenditure that's in the budget that they don't make, right? It's not like a company, a private sector business, that if you don't have the expenditure, it goes into profit or revenue or stock options or some other piece, right? There's no financial incentive on these gentlemen or women's part to not spend that money,
But there is a savings.
right? But there is an accountability to public funds, to
Yeah,
the
of course.
stakeholders of not just the employees, but the community members and the kids and all those things, that those funds get spent in a way that is also accountable and responsible for instance, there are a number of people who would probably argue I should never pay somebody for work they don't perform, right? If you don't show up and you don't do the work, you shouldn't get to pay unless you've got a leave that triggers it. There are other people in the community that should say, I never take that, if you can't show up, just, make it, there's both sides of the camp, and somehow this district has to find a way to basically make a decision, a financial and a contractual decision, and to write it down on a piece of paper and not leave it to whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Vance or Dan sitting here to make it work. So it's clear for everybody and unambiguous, right? So that people know what the expectation is, I think is a good thing. Not waiting to try and figure it out in the emotional component of it when you're trying to work through the emotions of whatever you're going through.
I mean, if you take the wildfires and the days that we added back to classified, if I had to go back and rewind the clock, I probably would have just left those calendar days as non-working days for those folks. I think we went, because there wasn't a plan written down, we'd not experienced that before, didn't know what to do. We wanted to make it fair, wanted to make it right, but we ended up over the last 2 months having to send out reminder notices to all the principals because a lot of those folks still had hours on the books to take those days off. It had just been better to leave it alone than to, press upon Kevin and Brett to say, send reminder notices, get these people their time. And we didn't know. We did what we thought was best at the time, but to Lisa's point, having something prescribed in advance that's going to specify how this is going to be done keeps us out of those emotional moments where we've got to feel like we got to make something right for somebody and then not know the consequence down the road.
But
that's our intent,
Mhm.
is to have a prescribed process up front so that we're not in a situation where we have to, kind of make a best guess about what we should or shouldn't do.
But in that scenario you laid out, you were talking about equity between the teachers and between the teachers and classified, correct? That was the issue that we were talking about there. What we have on the page is already covers what happens in that scenario. They make up the days, or they would, we have that laid out. What you're talking about is a separate issue that was not in the contract that I think was right to take up. Trying to build equity between the two groups. I think that's right.
Well,
But that's not laid out in your current proposal either.
Well,
quite frankly.
yeah, and we have two different bargaining units with two totally different types of work that is performed. And so, to continue to come back and make these parallels to say, so for instance, let's take, the end of the school year, we, in an effort to be fair to, we could have made classified work longer after, June 21st. We didn't, but we should have a process that's outlined in advance and not making these comparisons to the other unit. Because you have an opportunity right now to let's get it agreed upon up front. It can't be let's agree upon it up front, but if the teachers get something better, let's not agree. Let's now do better than the contract. Let's get it down in paper right now.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it still wouldn't address the situation you had because you chose to do something that was, I think, again, right and equitable, but we had a process already laid out in the contract. So we followed that process where we needed to. Really, the thing that caused the turmoil was when they flipped those days from teaching only day or non-contact days to contact days, right? That's what flipped things on its head a little bit because then our folks were not supposed to work those days, right? And that is a different process. Neither your proposal or the language addresses that, right? And I understand that we were trying to do an equity issue there, and I think that was right, but it's not a fault of the language. I don't think it's a fault at all. It's definitely, the language didn't fail us. So I understand what you're saying about trying to put it by the different months and different things, but at the end result is somebody who, works hard for you, because of an act of God, literally losing time that they should be spending with their family because of something they can't control. And that's the piece. When I use the word shameful, that's it. The savings goes back to the district. It doesn't matter if it goes in your pocket or whoever. It's a savings for the district. That's the only result that happens here. You save money. Okay.
Other
So
than I think that we're charged with, being stewards of the taxpayers' money. And there's definitely people out there that would say, I don't ever pay for something for work not performed.
sure.
And so,
And there's people on the other side of that argument, right? That's
So-
where we have to figure
and
it
we've
out.
and we've got a great clause in here that says after one more than 1 week, we sit down and bargain it. So, I mean, I think that we're trying to spell it out more clearly as to what happens to each group. And if we do have another 2-week event, we've even a 6-day event, we will sit down and bargain it.
I think it's also important that we obviously think, we obviously are going to probably agree to disagree, but we don't think that what we've got there works.
Yep.
Right? We're not doing this just for the heck of it, right? We actually have lived with this, we've worked with this, and we have experienced difficulties in trying to make it work. And so we're trying to find a way to make it better. So we don't agree with you necessarily that as it has been bargained, now that we've lived through it, that we think that it works as well as you think it works.
Yeah, these things really, are things that shook out that never could have been even anticipated if we sat down for several days and tried to write an article. These are situations that many of us in the room collectively lived, and from an administrative standpoint, payroll and HR, these are very, very specific details that had to be dealt with, and much of which obviously was discussed with you going through it. And I think the goal is, if none of us in this room were here and someone was to pick up a contract and not know anything about how we operate, that they could open the contract and have some semblance of the real fine details here, because they matter. And I think that's why this is important.
Well, I hear what you guys have to say. I think you're right. We agree to disagree. I'll tell you that the pushback I've got from the members, just in advance has gotten, this is going to be an issue. I just want to give you fair warning on that. It's not something that people are super psyched about. So that being said, for next time, will you guys have the other articles that we responded to? And then I guess we're going to give you a response to the articles that you've given us back today. Does that sound right?
So just a kind of a quick housekeeping. So
Yeah.
20 we TA'd.
20 with you.
We gave you back
3,
25 is
25.
back.
25, yeah.
So 16 is, we're going with our previous dates, the 518 counter proposal. So
Okay.
that's yours. 3 is yours.
Well, 3 you responded back.
Yeah,
to.
so I'm saying I'm kind of just saying whose court it is. So it's in your court, would you? So
But on
25,
16,
16,
To be clear, at 16, you have no return proposal, right? From the last
Yes,
one.
no, our proposal is the same proposal we gave you on
Okay.
5/8.
So nothing new. Just-
No new
okay.
change, no
Okay.
changes.
That's what I'm asking. Okay, thank you.
We did indicate that we'll have some conversation about the reasonable vacation component
Sure.
piece. But our proposal to you would be literally just making a photocopy of 5/18 and changing the date to 6/30.
Okay.
We didn't feel like we needed to kill a tree to do that.
I don't think you did either. All right.
and so,
And then you have 4, right?
we don't have a counter.
I think you intended for it to be the 5/18. didn't you?
Yeah, so that is also our 518.
Okay.
And so then 18 is in ours then too, or
Yeah.
would be ours since they gave us a counter. Okay. So we'll come on, what's the date we have is
6/22.
6/22 at 2:30.
Yep, that's what I showed.
6/22 at 2:30,
To 6:30? Is that what you have?
2:30 to 6:30.
Okay. Yeah. We're See,
All right.
since it's so early in the month, do we want to maybe schedule one more date out? So just in case we don't get it done on the 22nd? Just because my schedule's starting to get kind of full with 8 contracts.
I can get my calendar, I'll take a look.
Maybe like the 6th, 7th, 8th of July. Or those 3 days. Maybe 6th and 7th would be better. Unless we go earlier on the 8th.
Your calendar's open on the 7th. Do you? Well, no, actually it's. Brett, Kevin, what do you, 7th works for me. Lisa? I could probably make the 6th work too.
The 6th does not work for me.
Okay.
7th would be better for me.
Let me check something. Let me just a sec here.
How's that work for you, Janet? The 7th.
I don't think it works for our side too.
I think it will work.
2:30, 6:30 again? What do you think? Okay. 2:30, 6:30 again?
All right. It's in there.
Yep, 22nd, 2:30, 6:30, and July 7th.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and
Yeah.
your proposals. We'll get to work on ours.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.